The air in Chicago grew heavy in May 2025. A city's leader spoke. Mayor Brandon Johnson stood in a church, the Apostolic Church of God in Woodlawn. His words were meant for those gathered there, a Sunday service reflection. But they soon echoed far beyond those sacred walls, carried by the currents of media and online discourse. He spoke of hiring within his administration. He spoke with a focus on black officials. These words, perhaps unintended in their eventual reach, lit a political fuse. A national conversation, or perhaps more accurately, an old and deep-seated American argument, reignited with fresh intensity. It was about race, about fairness, about who gets a seat at the table of power. What did Mayor Brandon Johnson say that caused such an immediate and forceful stir? He highlighted the appointments he had made. He specifically mentioned black individuals placed in key influential positions, including 2 deputy mayors and the city's chief operations officer. He explained that these appointments were, in part, to ensure that the interests of black communities were effectively represented in the governance of Chicago. Then came the particular phrase that traveled fastest and furthest. When you hire our people, we always look out for everybody else. To some ears, this was a statement of profound inclusion, an articulation that a historically marginalized group, when empowered, would inherently ensure broader fairness. To others, it sounded like a clear preference, a potential bias. The federal government, specifically the Department of Justice, listened with keen attention. The Civil Rights Division quickly announced an investigation. This was not a minor procedural review. They declared their intent to scrutinize the city of Chicago's hiring practices with serious purpose. The central question was stark and significant. Did these practices, perhaps influenced by the mayor's stated priorities, constitute a pattern or practice of racial discrimination? If so, they could be in violation of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. This landmark law explicitly prohibits employment discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. The investigation was announced as being in its early stages, a careful search for evidence, for patterns, for practices that might be deemed unlawful. Assistant Attorney General Harmeet K. Dillon, representing the DOJ, publicly addressed the unfolding situation. She stated that Mayor Johnson's comments, particularly those made at the church service, raised serious concerns about the city's employment decisions. The worry, she articulated, was whether such a focus on hiring black individuals for top-level positions might extend to lower-level roles as well, potentially disadvantaging other groups. The Department of Justice formalized its concerns by sending a letter to Mayor Johnson's office. This letter officially initiated the probe and explicitly cited Johnson's remarks as a primary catalyst for the investigation. The federal government was now formally questioning the city's approach to building its team, a team meant to serve all of Chicago's diverse people. Mayor Brandon Johnson and his office did not remain silent in the face of federal scrutiny. They mounted a defense of the administration's hiring record and its underlying philosophy. The mayor firmly asserted that all appointments made under his leadership were based on merit. The individuals chosen for various roles were highly qualified, he insisted. The overarching goal, his office communicated, was to create a city government that genuinely reflected the rich diversity of Chicago's population. Beyond defending the hires, Mayor Johnson also cast a critical eye on the investigation itself. He suggested that the probe might not be entirely objective, labeling it as politically motivated and a reflection of a federal administration whose values differed from those of his city. To substantiate their claims of fairness and representation, Mayor Johnson's office released detailed demographic data for his administration. They provided a transparent breakdown of their staff composition. Out of 105 members within the mayor's direct team, approximately 34.3% were identified as black. Around 30.5% were white, nearly 23.8% were Hispanic, and about 6.7% were Asian, with a smaller percentage identifying as multiracial. The mayor's office was quick to point out that these figures aligned reasonably well with the city's overall demographics as reported by the U.S. Census Bureau. Chicago, a city known for its mosaic of cultures and communities, they argued, was now seeing that diversity mirrored in its leadership. Supporters of Mayor Johnson vigorously echoed his sentiments and defended his approach. They argued that proactive, intentional measures are often necessary to address long-standing inequities. The historical underrepresentation of black people and other minority groups in governmental roles is an undeniable reality, they contended. From this perspective, Johnson's focus on hiring black officials was not seen as discriminatory. Instead, it was viewed as a conscious and necessary effort to correct historical imbalances and ensure that a wider range of perspectives informed decision-making processes. This, they believed, would ultimately lead to policies and governance that better served all communities, aligning with Johnson's own stated belief. Many allies also focused on interpreting the mayor's most controversial phrase, "When you hire our people, we always look out for everybody else." For these supporters, this was not a declaration of exclusionary favoritism. Rather, they saw it as an affirmation of a particular worldview, one forged in shared experience. They interpreted it to mean that individuals who have themselves experienced marginalization often develop a deeper, more encompassing empathy. Such individuals, they argued, might be more acutely attuned to the varied needs of diverse communities, not just their own. This perspective offers a challenge to the notion that focusing on the inclusion of one group inherently means the neglect of others, suggesting a different pathway to achieving universal benefit and understanding. The controversy unfolding in Chicago in May 2025 does not exist in isolation. It touches upon deep, often painful roots in the broader American historical narrative. The persistent underrepresentation of black people, as well as other minority groups in positions of significant power and influence, is a story centuries in the making. For vast stretches of the nation's history, doors were systematically closed, and opportunities were explicitly denied based on race. Therefore, when a contemporary leader like Mayor Johnson speaks of intentionally hiring from these historically excluded groups, those words carry an immense weight. They speak to a profound desire to acknowledge and begin to undo past wrongs, an attempt to build a government that truly looks like the people it is meant to serve. This situation inevitably connects to the long and often fraught debate surrounding affirmative action. For many decades, policies specifically designed to increase the representation of marginalized groups in employment and education have been highly contentious. Some view these policies as absolutely essential tools for achieving genuine equality and rectifying systemic disadvantages. Others, however, perceive them as a form of reverse discrimination, arguing they unfairly penalize individuals from majority groups. At the heart of this debate often lies the complex question of merit. What does it truly mean to be qualified for a position? And should factors like race or background play any role at all in hiring decisions, particularly within public service organizations? These are not simple questions with easy answers. Critics of Mayor Johnson's remarks and of broader diversity, equity, and inclusion (DEI) initiatives typically argue for a strict and unadulterated interpretation of meritocracy. They firmly believe that hiring decisions should be based solely and exclusively on an individual's qualifications, demonstrable skills, and relevant experience. Any consideration of race or ethnicity, they contend, is inherently discriminatory and a violation of the fundamental principle of equal opportunity for every individual, regardless of background. This viewpoint often emphasizes individual achievement and capabilities over any form of group identity or collective historical experience. There is a genuine worry among these critics that focusing on race can lead to tokenism or a perceived lowering of standards, a concern that proponents of DEI initiatives strongly dispute. The broader context for this debate also includes recent actions and stances at the federal level. The previous Trump administration, for instance, had actively sought to ban DEI practices from hiring models in both public and private sectors, notably through an executive order. The current Department of Justice, operating under a different presidential administration, is now the body investigating Chicago's practices. Interestingly, this same DOJ's Civil Rights Division also recently announced the creation of a new specialized unit. This unit is tasked with addressing DEI policies specifically at federally funded universities. This juxtaposition highlights the ongoing national tension and intense scrutiny surrounding efforts to promote diversity, whether in city halls or on university campuses, showcasing a complex and often contradictory legal and political landscape. The Department of Justice's investigation into the hiring practices of the city of Chicago carries a weight that extends far beyond the city limits. The outcome of this federal probe could have truly far-reaching implications. This is not merely about Mayor Brandon Johnson or the specific composition of his current administration. It is fundamentally about how cities across the entire United States will approach the complex challenge of fostering diversity within their workforces moving forward. If the DOJ were to find substantive violations of civil rights law, it could lead to federally mandated changes in Chicago's hiring procedures. Such a development would undoubtedly send a powerful and reverberating message to other municipalities that are also grappling with similar issues of representation, equity, and strict legal compliance. City leaders and public administrators everywhere are watching these events unfold with keen interest. Many are actively striving to build more inclusive local governments. There is a widely held belief that municipal staff should accurately reflect the diverse populations they serve, as this is often seen as crucial for effective governance, policy relevance, and building community trust. However, these leaders must navigate this ambition within the clearly defined boundaries of civil rights laws. These laws, primarily designed to prevent discrimination against individuals, create a framework that can sometimes seem at odds with group-focused diversity goals. The Chicago case starkly highlights the delicate and often precarious balance that must be struck. How can a city proactively promote diversity without inadvertently crossing established legal lines? This remains the central challenge. The arguments presented from all sides of this controversy reveal a fundamental and enduring tension within American society. On one hand, there is a powerful and morally charged push for restorative justice. This perspective calls for actively addressing historical inequities and systemic disadvantages. It means making conscious, deliberate efforts to include those individuals and groups who have long been excluded from corridors of power and opportunity. On the other hand, there is an equally strong commitment to individual rights and the principle of equal treatment under the law, an ideal often interpreted as advocating for colorblindness in official decisions. The Chicago controversy forces a direct confrontation between these deeply held, sometimes conflicting, American values. Finding common ground or a universally accepted solution is exceptionally difficult when fundamental interpretations of fairness and justice differ so profoundly. Ultimately, the resolution of this particular investigation in Chicago, and perhaps more importantly, the broader public and political conversation it has undeniably spurred, will significantly shape the future. It will influence how public institutions across the country define concepts like merit, fairness, and opportunity in the context of employment. It may well set new legal precedents for what is considered permissible and what is deemed discriminatory when striving for a truly representative bureaucracy. The aspirational goal for many remains a government that is simultaneously diverse and fair, effective in its duties and equitable in its impact. But the path to achieving such an ideal is demonstrably fraught with substantial legal complexities and deeply felt passionate disagreements, as the current situation in Chicago so vividly demonstrates for the nation to observe.